Welcome to Island Crimes and Mysteries. And now, it's time to join your host Nules for another episode.
Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Ireland Crimes and Mysteries. I want to thank you for joining me today, and if you're a returning listener, I want to say a big thank you for your continued support. If this is your first time listening to my podcast, welcome. It's great to have you on board. So without further ado, let's get started on today's story. Today's case takes us back to Dublin, where we will take a look at the disappearance and subsequent murder of Elaine O'Hara. Now, I just want to let you know before I begin this story that the subject matter in this podcast is delicate and sometimes can be a bit hard to listen to. So I'm just giving you a little heads up there before we begin, okay?
Well, we're here at Killikee Mountain. As you can see, it's a remote place. And it was here on the 13th of September 2013 that dog walker Magali Vernier, out with her dog Millie, stumbled across the remains of Elaine O'Hara. She found some bones lying in a wooded area, and this led to Gardaí being contacted. These were, of course, the remains of Elaine O'Hara. But the path from here wasn't so clear-cut. Deputy State Pathologist Michael Curtis couldn't establish her cause of death from what were essentially just bones. The skeleton showed no indication of a knife attack, leaving a hole in the prosecution's case and opening the door to the possibility that Elaine O'Hara took her own life just hours after she was discharged from St Edmundsbury Psychiatric Unit. But why here? A place where her body would not be found for 13 months. And why would she have left her car at Shangana, a 28-minute drive away, and then dumped belongings, including her keys and glasses, into a reservoir in Wicklow?
Elaine O'Hara was born on the 17th of March 1976, so St Patrick's Day, in Dublin, Ireland, and she was the eldest of 4 children. She grew up in Killiney, which was an affluent suburb in South County Dublin. Her parents, Frank and Eileen O'Hara, provided a supportive family environment. But her mother's death in 2002 from cancer was a major emotional blow for Elaine. She had been very close to her mother, and she, in turn, being her mother, was very protective of Elaine. Her father would continue supporting Elaine both emotionally and financially after her mother's passing. She was educated at St Joseph's of Clooney Secondary School in Killiney, where she actually faced bullying, a significant factor in a lot of the social difficulties that she would go on to have as an adult. This bullying lightly impacted her self-esteem and ability to form peer relationships, setting the stage for later vulnerabilities. From her teenage years, Elaine experienced significant mental health issues, including depression and borderline personality disorder. She was regularly hospitalised for psychiatric care starting at the age of 16. She was treated by Professor Anthony Clare, a prominent psychiatrist who diagnosed her with depression and the borderline personality disorder. And unfortunately, the sudden death of Professor Clare in 2007 was another significant setback for Elaine, and this potentially disrupted her continuity of care, of course, and exacerbated her mental health challenges. So not the easiest of starts for Elaine O'Hara. Now, on top of all these psychological challenges, Elaine also had a lot of physical health challenges, which included asthma, diabetes and dyslexia. She had revealed to specialists that she had been, as she put it, tormented by a play in her head since the age of 12. Now, this could indicate auditory hallucinations or just intrusive thoughts. And she attempted self-harm, which included trying to cut her wrists at the age of 16. The loss of another close friend in her teens was also an additional stressor that deeply affected her mental health. Elaine had expressed feelings of worthlessness to Professor Clare in June 2005, saying that she wasn't born for life. "No one likes me," she said. "I'm a bad person." She had a deep need for love and acceptance, driven by her mental health struggles, past losses, and the isolation she felt after being bullied at school. This need for attention made her vulnerable to relationships where she was provided with the validation she craved, even in a dangerous context. Her sister described her as quite naive and very trusting of people. Her need for love and attention made her susceptible to manipulation. Elaine left her family home in Killiney in 2005 at the age of 29, marking a significant step towards independence for her. She first moved to a converted garage at Rockville Crescent off Newtown Park Avenue in Blackrock, a suburb of South County Dublin. In 2008, she relocated to a bedsit in Ardmeen Lodge, still in Blackrock. Blackrock was close to Killiney, which I suppose allowed her to have her independence while still being close to her family and the support networks that she needed. By September 2010, Elaine had acquired an affordable housing unit in Stepaside. Stepaside was also in South County Dublin and was near her previous residences. She would live here until her death on August the 22nd, 2012. Now, Elaine was not shy of work. She had 2 jobs that kept her going. Her main job was as a childcare assistant at St John's National School in Ballybrick, which is a primary school in South County Dublin. She worked as an assistant there, helping the teachers with the young children, supervising them during activities and assisting with their care. Now, she also worked part-time at a newsagent's in Blackrock Shopping Centre. A colleague of hers saying that she had been keen to take on extra hours because she'd been worried about paying the bills. She was open with co-workers about her mental health struggles, though she didn't share specifics. This part-time role provided additional income that helped her stay afloat financially. Beyond these jobs, Elaine was working towards something bigger. She was taking night classes in Dún Laoghaire to become a Montessori teacher. The course covered child development, the Montessori philosophy, which focuses on hands-on learning and self-directed activity and practical teaching skills. It was a part-time programme done in the evenings, and it aimed at earning her a certificate to teach in a Montessori school. Elaine's days were full with this schedule. Elaine O'Hara had one documented romantic relationship before a man named Graeme Dwire would come into her life. Her sister would testify at her trial that Elaine was involved with a man who was a friend of her brother's. But the relationship didn't work out, and Elaine was very upset about it. This is the clearest detail we have about Elaine's love life before 2007. There's no name for this man and no specific dates are given, like when it started or ended, but it happened and it affected her. It's in late 2007 that Elaine made contact with Graeme Dwire through a website called alt.com. Now, this is a platform designed for people interested in BDSM and fetish communities, a space where users connect over specific preferences. Before we go any further now, I'll just give you a quick word on Graeme Dwire. Just the basics, because this podcast is about Elaine, but obviously we can't talk about Elaine without mentioning Graeme Dwire. Graeme was born on the 13th of September 1972 in Bandon, County Cork. By late 2007, he was 35 and living in Foxrock, Dublin. He was working as an architect and married and had children. That was who he was on paper when Elaine and him first crossed paths online. Their connection started when Elaine, with a profile name Help Me Learn 36F, viewed Dwire's profile, Architect72, on alt.com. That was the first step. This site lets people set up profiles, check out other profiles and message if these other profiles are somebody that you want to talk to. Elaine saw his account and from there they began communicating. There's no record of who sent the first message, whether it was Elaine reaching out to him and him responding or vice versa. But in late 2007 is when it all started. It was all online at this stage. It was just a starting point that pulled them together through the platform. But it sets off a chain of events that will ultimately end in tragedy. At this point, Elaine is carrying a lot between her mental health issues and her physical health issues, and she's probably feeling a bit isolated. I mean, it was hard not to feel for her, to be honest with you. She's been fighting all these battles, those hospital stays, the work to build her career, and that longing for her just to be loved. Dwire's world was different. He had a stable setup. He had marriage, he had a family, he had a career in architecture. But he was on this alt.com too as Architect72, showing a completely different side of him, the secret side of him that no one close to him was aware of. Elaine, of course, was shy and burdened by low self-worth, and she sought connection, a way to ease the isolation that clung to her after years of bullying and all those losses in her life. Graeme, on the other hand, he was older and more calculated, and he offered control. Soon their exchanges moved beyond words. Court evidence shows that in late 2007, this marked the start of the physical meetings, though there's no exact dates that I could find when they first met in person. Graeme called her his slave. She addressed him as Sir. He tied her up regularly, a master-slave bond that locked Elaine into a role she couldn't easily escape from, I suppose. And by 2008, things between them had become much more intense. Their encounters were now more frequent and beginning to turn more fierce with bondage and violence. Then knives entered the frame, wielded by Graeme Dwire in acts that were captured on homemade sex videos later found on his laptop. In one video, he stabbed Elaine during sex, the blade breaking her skin as the camera rolled. By 2009, their contact seemed to have dwindled after the events that had happened on that video, a moment that obviously had left its mark on her. For a while, it seemed like she might have got free from him. I couldn't find any evidence of any communication between them between 2009 and 2011, and it appears Elaine's mental health was stable during this period with no hospital admissions noted. But then, on the 25th of March 2011, Graeme sent Elaine a text from a new number, an 083 number tied to a Nokia phone he'd bought with cash. He'd registered it under a false name and used a fake address linked to his sister's house in Tipperary. That day he texted her, "I got this phone and SIM. Can't be traced." Making it clear this was about hiding. Elaine didn't have a Nokia phone at this stage. She would later on in the story. So she replied on her iPhone. This was the one that she used for everyday life. For those early months of 2011, she was still texting from her iPhone, while Graeme used his master Nokia, as it was later called in court. But sometime between April and July 2011, that changed. Graeme gave her a Nokia, a basic model, which would just literally give you calls and texts. And that was dubbed the slave phone, a name that matched their dynamic, slave and master. This phone was also bought for cash, so no contract, no trace, just like his. From then on, they used these two Nokias for their private talks, separate from Elaine's iPhone, which she kept for everything else. The master and slave labels weren't just nicknames, they were how the phones would be marked into evidence later on. Horrifying text messages of submission and pain were traded between them. Dwire's text revealed a growing fixation with knives and violence, pressurising Elaine, who was still very vulnerable. On March the 29th, he wrote, "Got fake knives," and then later, "Lucky if I don't use the other one," with Elaine saying, "Lucky me," which indicated her awareness of real danger. By the 1st of April 2011, his fixation was escalating, saying in a text, "Still dying to knife someone. Worried I might do it." And "Can't wait that long to sink my knife into flesh and see blood pour," asking, "Will you help?" Elaine replied no, but later agreed yes, maybe. When he texted, "Promise I can kill you by stabbing?" On the 8th of April, he mentioned a Dublin stabbing, saying, it must have been a fantastic feeling for him, and Elaine responded, "You are sick, very sick," with him countering, "I'm going to do it. You have to help me, or it will be you." Chilling words indeed. Elaine, I would say, knew she was in a dangerous situation at this stage, but being so vulnerable, probably did not know how to go about extracting herself from the situation. In that year leading up to Elaine's disappearance, Dwire's fixation with knives and wanting to kill someone just continued to intensify, with Dwire texting her saying, "It will all be worth it when I kill you." His texts were relentless, Elaine telling him in one of her texts that she was a person of dignity, and him replying, "Not when you're chained up." Elaine, with her low self-worth and esteem, had been a prime target for him to groom. But it was obvious from the text that she was getting nervous and probably wanted to distance herself from him. But he knew what to say to reel her back in, texting, Okay, a life for a life. Help me take one and I will give you one. If she helped him find someone to kill, he would give her what she always wanted, a child. She replied, "Did you mean it, sir?" And his chilling reply, "Yes, it's your reward for helping me stab a girl to death." He was really putting the pressure on her to find someone for him to kill. Now, it's worth noting that in July of 2012, Elaine was admitted to St Edmundsbury Hospital, though the precise date and circumstances leading to this specific admission are not fully detailed in the public records. Court evidence and family statements indicate that her mental health had deteriorated in the months prior, very likely exacerbated by the ongoing stress and tumultuous relationship with Graeme Dwire. Elaine's admission in July 2012 was not her first at St Edmundsbury. She had been a patient there multiple times, seeking help when her suicidal thoughts or self-harm tendencies intensified. During her trial coverage, it was noted that she had been in hospital for much of the summer of 2012, with her stay extending from July until her discharge on August the 22nd, 2012. Family members, including her father and his partner, later testified that Elaine had been dealing with suicidal ideation in the lead up to this period, though she showed signs of improvement by August. Her sister recalled Elaine's history of psychiatric care, stating that she had been in and out of hospital for years, with St Edmundsbury a familiar refuge. While in hospital, Elaine was under supervised care, but she did have access to her personal iPhone and the slave Nokia she used with Dwire. Text exchanges with friends and family from her iPhone showed she was planning her discharge, contacting her employer at the newsagents in Blackrock to arrange shifts and expressing excitement about the Tall Ships Festival in Dublin, set for late August. On Tuesday, August the 14th, 2012, Elaine got a text on her Nokia. "Am I right in thinking you don't want to die anymore?" he asked. Elaine didn't reply. At least no records showed that she did. She was tired, fragile, but holding steady. The following day, on Wednesday, the 15th of August, Elaine still had not replied. Elaine moved through the hospital's sterile corridors, likely counting days to freedom. She'd been texting friends from her iPhone, keeping threads of normalcy alive. Dwire, meanwhile, was in Foxrock with his wife and children. And that quiet was just a pause, it wasn't peace. Elaine's discharge was set for August the 22nd, her chance to step back into the world. But Graeme wasn't done with her yet. Then on August the 16th, the master phone stirred. "If you were any good, you would help me find her. Hold her down while I kill her," Dwire texted. He'd been pushing this for over a year, since July of 2011, when he'd offered her a child if she'd help him stab someone. Elaine's reply isn't recorded, but her silence does speak. She told him before, on July the 30th, 2011, she wanted kids, a life free of stabs. Now in hospital, she was focused on leaving, not killing. Her family later noted she seemed stable, even hopeful. Dwyer's texts were a jab, testing her. "I will get away with it. No one ever caught Farina Murray or homeless woman in Phoenix Park." He was boasting, referencing unsolved murders to flex his nerve. Elaine texted back, "You might not get away with it." She knew his fantasies. Text from April 2011 when he said, "Can't wait to sink my knife into flesh." Or from July 29, 2011, "You can die from blood loss." She pleaded then, "Please don't kill me, please." Now she challenged him, however faintly. Dwire replied, "I will." It was a promise, cold and firm, as Elaine faced her last days in hospital. By Saturday the 18th, the texts he sent were heavier. "You must help me do her, or it's you," Dwire wrote. Elaine's response, again, isn't logged, but her actions that day tell a story. She was packing, preparing to leave St Edmundsbury, her mind on work and the tall ships. Friends later said she'd been chatty, planning her week. Probably the fact that her discharge was near, she didn't engage. Her silence was a resistance, however small, against a man who'd filmed himself stabbing her in 2008. The following day, on the Sunday, still silence, no texts from either of the Nokias. But by that Monday, August the 20th, He was ready to tighten the noose. The master phone lit up. "Morning, slave. Looking forward to seeing you Wednesday," Dwire texted. Wednesday was August the 22nd, her discharge day. Elaine replied, "I'm not being stabbed." A firm no after years of his pressure. But Dwire pushed. "I must see blood, and I want to do it outdoors." Elaine bent, texting, "Sir, I'll take stabbing." She'd done this before, refused, then relented. Her family remember her being fine that day, but Dwire's words must have had a weight on her that she couldn't shake. His plan was forming. Wednesday would be the day. On Tuesday, August the 21st, the text turned brutal. "I'm going to get blood on my knife for this. A lot of blood. Then we can move on," Dwire wrote. Then he texted, "You will have stab wounds. You know the drill. Last few did not bleed. These will." Elaine tried to negotiate. "More painful getting stabbed on an empty stomach. Suit yourself." She was grasping for control. Dwire replied, "As many as I like." And later, "Tonight's punishment will be like me pretending to do someone for real, okay?" Elaine didn't refuse outright. Her strength was freeing. She had told him way back in July of 2011, "I don't want to die." But now, facing freedom, she was cornered. The meeting was set on Wednesday outdoors by the shore. Elaine left St. Edmundsbury that morning, discharged into a world she hoped to reclaim. At 8 a.m, she texted from the slave phone, "This place, although a pain in the arse at times, is safe because I know what's coming and I don't want to leave." She continued, "I'm just so scared. Do you know, sir, that I'm scared of you? You have this hold over me." Dwire didn't reply, at least not on record. Later, he texted, "Go down to the shore and wait," and Elaine went. Elaine parked her car, a Mitsubishi Colt, at Shangana Cemetery and headed towards the park, dressed in a light blue raincoat with her hair tied back and a small bag slung over her shoulders, as per the court records and witness accounts. That day, after leaving the hospital, she went with her father to visit her mother's grave. She then drove home to Stepaside, dropped off her iPhone, bag and purse, stuff she'd never normally leave behind. Then she headed to Shangana. Her car would later be found with the keys still inside, just sitting there like she'd meant to come back. Shangana Park is a quiet green patch with a drop down to a rocky shore. Her slave Nokia phone pinged off a cell tower near Killiney Dart Station at 5:07 p.m, about a kilometre south, her last signal before the phone went dead, either running out of battery or she had chosen to switch it off. She was on her way to the shoreline, following that text from Dwire, but no one saw her walking down that path. Shangana's shore isn't your typical busy beach. It's just a rough strip of shoreline covered with pebbles, and it's hidden under Killiney Hill and between Shankhill and Bray. It has a deep drop cutting it off from the world above. There's no CCTV along that winding track from the park to the water, and no one came forward later to say they had seen a woman in a light blue raincoat heading down to the shoreline. The weather was mild that day, 17 degrees and partially cloudy with a light wind blowing in off the Irish Sea. But it was a lonely spot, even in August. That last text from Dwire at 5:45 p.m, "Go down to the shore and wait," got no answer from Elaine. Her phone was already silent at this stage. So did anyone see her going down there? Not quite. The nearest we get is her being in the park at around 5 p.m. before she'd started that trek. After that, nothing. She did have a word with someone though, just one person, at around that time, a man named Conor Guilfoyle, who was out for his run near Shangana Park. And Elaine stopped him. She asked him how to get to the footbridge over the railway line that linked the park to the coast. Conor said, "She asked me was there a bridge over there or something to that effect. I said, yes, there's a bridge just over there for the railway. One of the reasons I remember her was because she didn't say thank you or have any engagement with me. That was the end of the conversation." Mr. Guilfoyle told the Gardaí that he remembered seeing Miss O'Hara, but he couldn't remember when. He then realised he was using the Map My Run app, which charts your dates, times and routes. It was very unusual because I've only used it twice, he said. When the officer asked me about her, I remembered meeting her, but I couldn't say what date. I had been using the Map My Run app, which has GPS. It gives the date and the time and the place. That was the last time anyone heard Elaine speak. 5 words about a footbridge. No one else came forward to say they'd chatted with her. Not at the shore, not after Connor's encounter with her. Now, where was Graeme Dwire at this point? Did anyone see him? Not a soul puts him at the shore or with Elaine that evening. But his phone does leave some breadcrumbs. At 5:35 p.m, the master Nokia pinged off a tower at St Michael's Hospital in Dunleary, 3 kilometres north of Shangana, about a 15-minute drive. Then at 6:26 p.m, the phone pings at a tower near Killiney Hill, right above the shore, and a stone's throw from Killikee Mountain, where Elaine's remains would later turn up. He was moving and closing in on her, but no one spotted him. Nobody saw his silver Mitsubishi Pajero. No camera grabbed him near the park. Earlier that day, around 3 p.m, security footage captured him leaving his office on Bagot Street in Dublin, climbing into the Pajero and heading off. After that, nothing. His phone says he's in the area, but no one saw him. No one heard a thing, no shouts, no car engines, nothing. Elaine's car remained parked at the cemetery with the keys inside, untouched since she'd left it. A woman later did come forward saying that she had heard loud crying coming from the graveyard. She said she saw a woman fitting O'Hara's general description, crying beside an old grave, but could not positively identify her as Elaine. The Gardaí figure that Graeme Dwire drove down, met her at the shoreline and took her to Killikee Mountain, where he stabbed her and left her. So when did people notice Elaine was missing? It wasn't straight away. Her dad tried ringing her on the 23rd of August but got no reply. He went over to her apartment expecting to see Elaine there, but she wasn't. He then ironically texted her saying, "Are you alive?" But she didn't obviously respond. Her friends at the Tall Ships were also surprised when Elaine didn't turn up as planned. She'd been looking forward to volunteering as a guide that year at the festival. It's August 24th when the worry sets in. Frank tried ringing her again, but still got no answer. He headed back over to her flat in Stepaside with his friend Sheila. The door was locked, lights were off, everything still the same as the previous day. Inside was her iPhone on the counter, her bag and her purse beside it, the wallet full. Her bed was made. The flat was spotless. But Elaine was nowhere to be found. Frank then first contacted the hospital Elaine had recently been discharged from to see if she had checked herself back in, but she wasn't there either. He then went over to his wife's grave. That's when he sees Elaine's car. He looked into the car and saw cigarettes, a lighter and a charger for a phone that was not the same as Elaine's phone. He called the Gardaí, fearing Elaine may have taken her own life. The Gardaí started looking. They put posters up, they put appeals out, they checked the CCTV at her apartment, and they saw that she arrived home at 4:29 p.m. on the 22nd of August. But then she left the apartment again at 5:05 p.m. She was wearing that blue raincoat, a navy tracksuit bottoms and white runners. They also spotted that she was carrying a Nokia phone in her hand as she left the apartment. No one could understand why she left the apartment again, as she told her father she wanted to get some rest in order to be ready for the Tall Ships the following day. The Gardaí canvassed the park near where her car was found, and this is when they met Connor the jogger. After extensive inquiries and no leads, it was assumed that Elaine had taken her own life by walking into the water, though the case remained open and Elaine was technically a missing person. Little did everybody know what was ahead. On the 13th of September 2013, some 13 months after Elaine first disappeared, a French lady who frequently took her dogs for walks on a wooded property that she had permission from the landowner to use near Killikee, was out walking her dogs that day. She often left them off the leash in the area, but this particular day, one of the dogs, a dog called Millie, would not return when she called out, so she went to look for her, only to be confronted by skeletal remains consisting of various bones and a rib cage. She initially assumed it was a deer carcass, but as she continued to look, she came across the blue tracksuit bottoms. She touched the bottoms with her foot and noticed a shoe. At this point, Millie returned with a large bone in her mouth. The lady was horrified as it slowly dawned on her that she had stumbled upon human remains. Suspecting that it was human remains, she contacted the property owner, and together with another individual, they explored the area even more and stumbled upon a secluded clearing where they discovered more scattered bones, including a jawbone, clearly human in origin. Alarmed, they alerted the Gardaí. Eventually, only about 65% of the skeleton was retrieved, and at this point, they could not tell if the remains were male or female. Dental records from teeth attached to the jawbone would later confirm it was Elaine O'Hara. And by pure coincidence, just a few days earlier, on September the 10th, 2013, William Fagan and his brother and a companion were out near the Vartree Reservoir near Roundwood in County Wicklow when they noticed a bag in the water. That year, after an extended period of warm weather, the water levels in the reservoir had diminished significantly, making submerged objects visible. So their curiosity got the better of them, and they went down and they looked in the bag, and they found items which included handcuffs, clothing, a ball gag, and various restraints. Despite being shocked, they decided to leave the items there. But Fagan himself, he just couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than, some random stuff. So he went back and he gathered it all up and he brought it over to the Roundwood Garda station the next day. This is where Garda James O'Donoghue came into the picture, and he followed it up with multiple searches at the site. And on the 16th of September, he uncovered additional evidence: more handcuffs, keys, a leather mask, a knife, an inhaler, and a chain with a ring attached to it. He also found a Dunnes Stores loyalty card, and this would later be traced back to Elaine, who is now missing, as I said, for over a year. The hunt is now on to find out who killed her, as it's now quite obvious from all that's been found between her body and all this stuff in the reservoir that Elaine did not die naturally. The Garda Water Unit went back to the reservoir and they scoured it, recovering 2 Nokia phones, very similar to the one Elaine had in her hand on the CCTV footage. They also recovered the batteries for the phones, a pair of eyeglasses, sunglasses, and a rucksack. The prescription and frame number of the glasses matched O'Hara's records from a Specsavers location in Dublin, further tying the findings to her identity. Information that would later be retrieved from O'Hara's phone, despite being underwater for over 13 months, and the laptops, both O'Hara's and Dwire's, the information on them was immense. It roadmapped Elaine's warped relationship over years with Graeme Dwire. Elaine's Nokia phone only had one contact saved with the letters MSTR, master without the vowels on. And Dwire's phone, also the Nokia phone, only had one contact saved on it, and that was under SLV, slave without the vowels. A few weeks after Elaine's remains had been found, the Gardaí got a lead on who the Nokia phone was tied to. The phone had been bought on Grafton Street in Dublin. As I said earlier, he had used a fake name to purchase the phone. Initially, the Gardaí had brought another man in for questioning, but he had an alibi and it was quite obvious he knew absolutely nothing about what the Gardaí were questioning him on. The breakthrough would come from a series of texts to Elaine's phone where the master and slave had a discussion about the birth of the master's new baby girl. Gardaí were able to narrow down what baby girls were born on that date. He had also referenced coming fifth in a flying competition in one of the texts. Gardaí wondered if they were dealing with a pilot. They cross-referenced pilot's licenses with babies that had been born on that day, but again, nothing. The fact that it was a competition confused them, as pilots don't normally enter competitions. Then it dawned on them, maybe this person flew model aircrafts. They did some digging into members of flying clubs that would match the information they had. This was when the big breakthrough happened. Gardaí became aware of a man who had come fifth in a flying competition in the area where a lot of the items belonging to Elaine O'Hara had been found disposed of, the Dwire reservoir. This person had also become the father of a baby girl on the same date that the text message had been sent. These findings prompted authorities to obtain warrants to arrest Graeme and search his residence, where they uncovered additional incriminating items. Following his arrest, he admitted knowing Elaine O'Hara, but claimed it was only through emails and that he assumed, like everybody else, that she had ended her own life, denying any involvement in her death. The Gardaí, however, were able to present him with all the text message evidence they had from the text he had sent to Elaine. He told them that they had everything wrong and that he had actually been trying to help her. Gardaí began to dig a little deeper into Graeme's past, starting with his ex-girlfriends. One girlfriend in particular told them that she had found him to be a very frightening person, saying that he had once tried to bring a knife into the bedroom in an attempt to, as he put it, spice things up. She found this highly disturbing and she tried to end the relationship. But Graeme found it hard to hear the word no, and she stated he started trying to intimidate her and he was stalking her. When Gardaí examined Elaine's residence, they found many puncture wounds, presumably from a knife, in the mattress of her bed, as well as semen, which, when tested, matched the DNA of Graeme Dwire. He continued to claim his innocence, but when those videos were found on his computer, over 30 in total, let's just say the evidence didn't lie. The videos revealed at least 4 other women that had been involved in acts of a sexual nature with him, in which he appeared to be stabbing them. But the woman who featured in most of his videos was Elaine. Graeme had been living 2 lives. One where he was the loving family man with a job, and the other where he was living this depraved life, getting enjoyment out of physically assaulting and mutilating women. He denied all knowledge of the murder and claimed he knew nothing about the master phone. He wrote letters from his prison cell to his wife imploring her to believe him, where he said he had nothing to do with Elaine's murder, describing Elaine as that awful woman, saying he did not kill her, but had only tried to help her. She did not buy into this story, and once all the evidence came out, including the videos, she immediately left him. She was horrified by it all. His trial commenced on January the 22nd, 2015, with huge media coverage throughout. It was on the cover of every newspaper daily and the leading news story across all the networks. During the proceedings, the homemade videos depicting violent sexual acts, along with recovered email fragments, plus the texts, revealed a pattern of bondage, aggression and the use of knives. Multiple messages on O'Hara's phone highlighted Dwire's persistent threats to stab and kill her. Dwire's defence attorney, Remy Farrell, contended that no concrete evidence linked Dwire to O'Hara's demise. He pointed out her documented struggles with depression and noted that pathologists had never pinpointed her cause of death. Elaine had recently been discharged, as we know, from the psychiatric facility where she had sought treatment. Farrell argued there was not a shred of proof regarding how she died or even that her death was a homicide, suggesting that both law enforcement and her family initially leaned towards suicide as the likely explanation. He emphasised that O'Hara's involvement in BDSM was already known to the Gardaí prior to the body being found, and various scenarios could account for her death. According to Farrell, Dwire's violent text messages merely reflected his private fantasies, not intent. In contrast, prosecuting counsel Sean Gearan argued that the body of evidence demonstrated Dwire's calculated scheme to murder O'Hara and evade justice. He asserted that Dwire exploited O'Hara's fragile self-worth, with his desire to kill a woman clearly expressed in his messages. O'Hara, Gearan stressed, was not a consenting participant in violent acts, She had repeatedly voiced her aversion to being stabbed or harmed, seeking instead companionship, affection, and eventually a family. Aware of her recent psychiatric discharge, Dwire lured her with the intent to take her to the mountains and end her life, banking on the assumption that her death would be ruled a suicide if discovered. He had told her to leave her phone at home, her iPhone that is. He had told her where to park her car. He had told her where to meet him and instructions on how to get there, all from the burner phone. His intent was for it to look like she had ended her own life the very day she left hospital. His efforts to cover up their connection by disposing of the mobile phones and belongings, Guerin argued, underscored his premeditation. He'd even asked her a week before her death, "Does anybody know about me if anything happens to you?" She told him that no one knew about him, and he said, "Good, let's keep it that way." He lured Elaine to those mountains in Killikee, and there he fulfilled a fantasy he had had for so long, stabbing a woman to death. After the vicious crime, Dwire drove to another county near the flying club he'd been a member of, knowing there was a reservoir nearby. Here he disposed of all the evidence into that reservoir, thinking his secrets would never resurface. He then went home to his wife like nothing had happened and continued on with his life the same as usual. And that secret would probably have remained buried only for a series of events that happened by pure chance that brought the Gardaí to his door.
This was a meticulous and coordinated investigation which called upon a wide range of skills and expertise within An Garda Síochána and beyond. Involved many thousand hours of investigative work. Some 619 separate lines of inquiry were pursued in both in this jurisdiction and, as said, in the US and UK. 111 separate reports were created. A total of 488 persons were interviewed and 788 statements obtained. In excess of 5,300 hours of CCTV were scrutinised and examined by NAPLET, the investigation team. A total of 2,620 text messages were retrieved and analysed by the investigation teams. A total of 175 exhibits were generated during the course of the investigation. A core team of 20 Gardaí were committed to this investigation from its inception and throughout. They were supported by a wide range of persons with special skills, both within the organisation and beyond. Of particular value to the investigation was work carried out by our colleagues in Garda Telecom section, Computer Crime and the Computer Crime Unit and the Garda Crime Analysts. They worked with us right up to and throughout the site. This involved a huge amount of information and was generated, which required painstaking evaluation and investigation.
On the 27th of March 2015, after around 40 days of testimony, a unanimous jury found Dwire guilty. During sentencing, Judge Tony Hunt, imposing a life term, stated he 110% endorsed the jury's verdict, and the jurors were excused from future service for 30 years. Throughout and following the trial, Dwire's legal team challenged the validity of the mobile phone data used by the prosecution, arguing that Ireland's Communications Act 2011, retention of data, stemming from the EU's 2006 Data Retention Directive, was void since the European Court of Justice had invalidated the directive in 2014. This contention sparked a broader examination of state use of such data and fuelled grounds for an appeal, potentially affecting the admissibility of the phone evidence in Dwire's case and others reliant on Garda investigations. In late 2021, a European Courts of Justice advisor stated that retaining mobile phone metadata was permissible only for national security threats, not routine crime probes, a stance that could disrupt serious crime investigations across Europe. In April 2022, the European Courts of Justice ruled that blanket retention of such data violated EU law, paving the way for Ireland's Court of Appeal to assess its admissibility in Dwire's case. By June 2022, the Irish government was exploring urgent legislation to address the fallout from the ruling and Dwire's appeal. And in March 2023, however, the Court of Appeal rejected his appeal. Finally, in July 2024, Ireland's Supreme Court unanimously upheld the use of mobile phone data in the original trial. As the nation's highest court, its ruling exhausted Dwire's legal avenues, ensuring he would remain in prison, serving his life sentence as of that date. Only for a series of events, Graeme Dwire could very well have got away with murder. It took 13 months for the threads of Graeme Dwire's so-called perfect murder to unravel, but unravel they did, culminating in his conviction for one of Ireland's most infamous killings. What brought him down wasn't one single slip-up, but a chain of unlikely events. Remove any one of them, and he might still be a free man today. After murdering Elaine O'Hara, Dwire scooped up her belongings, her personal items, those sex toys that they'd used, the phones they'd texted on, and tossed them into the reservoir. There they sat, buried in the muck, beneath litres of water for over a year. During that time, I'm sure he possibly slept well, thinking that he'd pulled off the perfect crime. When he disposed of the evidence, the reservoir must have seemed like the perfect hiding spot. It was brimming after the wettest summer Ireland had seen in years. But fast forward 1 year to the summer of 2013. It was hot, dry, the hottest summer we'd had since 1995. And the water level plunged by 5 metres, way more than the usual 2 metres. As the surface dropped, some of Dwire's discarded stash peeked out from the mud. He was busy planning a double birthday bash with his wife when, unbeknownst to him, his carefully buried secrets started resurfacing. Enter Michael Fagan, a part-time bailiff with the County Wicklow Anglers Association. From the bridge, offering a prime view of the sprawling water, something glinted in the shadows and caught his attention. If he'd parked his boots anywhere else along the shore, he'd have missed it entirely. Rain was due soon, and it would have swallowed the items back up into obscurity. His decision to go back the next morning and bag the lot and drop it up to Roundwood Garda Station was a game changer. Without it, the items' major significance might have stayed buried, and a later Garda dive into the reservoir, which turned up the phones and more, would never have happened. Then on September the 13th, you have the French lady who was out walking her dogs on Killikee Mountain when her dog Millie bolted into the woods and she chased after him. She had seen deer bones in the area before, but these bones that she came across, courtesy of her dog, had tracksuit bottoms still intact, untouched by scavengers, and that clothing convinced her that it was a human. And on further searching, when they found the jawbone, she knew she'd found a person. The Gardaí then confirmed the remains as Elaine O'Hara's due to the dental records and DNA. Then you have Conor Guilfoyle, a runner who crossed paths with her at Shanganagh Park. Only for his Map My Run app, he probably wouldn't have known when exactly he'd seen her. All these twists of fate, Fagan's sharp eye, Garda O'Donoghue's persistence, the French lady's wandering dog, Guilfoyle's app, they all helped to crack Dwire's perfect plan wide open. 13 months after he thought he'd gotten away with it, the net closed in on him, and justice caught up with him. And so that's where Elaine O'Hara's story ends. After all the twists, the reservoir finds, the dog running off, Guilfoyle's quick chat on the bridge, thankfully, Graeme Dwire is behind bars for good, where he can never hurt another soul again. It's hard to shake off how this quiet woman's life ended up tangled in something so dark, or how these random moments came together to catch a killer who thought he'd outsmarted everyone. Elaine's gone, but her story sticks with you, doesn't it? So guys, that's it for today's episode of the Ireland Crimes and Mysteries podcast. Again, thanks for your listenership, and don't forget to subscribe to the show and hit that auto download so you never miss an episode. Until the next time, keep your eyes open and your mind curious. This podcast has been compiled from information gathered in the public sphere, like news articles, documentaries, and open source material that can be found on the web. Everything in this podcast is alleged unless a conviction has taken place.
You've been listening to Island Crimes and Mysteries. Join Nules for another episode, coming real soon. And keep up to date by following our social media sites, our YouTube channel, and our website, islandcrimesandmysteries.ie.